Weather Guy here. Baldur's Gate 3 is just around the corner. The game mechanics are adapted from the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition rule set. Here's a quick rundown of some of the biggest changes in the rules between the tabletop game and Larian Studios' upcoming release. Now, Dungeons & Dragons is typically played with truly randomly rolled dice. However, in Baldur's Gate 3, a feature called Karmic Dice is automatically turned on. Karmic Dice is a feature that takes away some of the randomization, working to prevent characters, both enemies and allies, from rolling too low for several rolls in a row. This will likely make fights more deadly and fast, while taking away the feels bad of rolling several nat 1s in a row. Personally, I will be disabling this feature just because I prefer the more random style and swings. However, you should play however you want, because what matters most is your own fun. Now, 5th edition normally has an expected level cap of 20, but here in Baldur's Gate 3 the level cap is going to be at 12. This is due to the absolute shenanigans that can occur at these later levels, things that just simply would be too difficult to adapt into a video game. Things like Wish, fighting across planes, and the absurd amount of attacks that fighters get. Not to mention the difficulty of balancing these later levels. Alright, so rests. In Baldur's Gate 3 you are allowed 2 short rests per long rest. Each short rest restores HP equal to half of your HP maximum. So no rolling hit dice like in traditional D&D. In addition, now long rests require camp supplies. This is not typically required during tabletop play, but it definitely makes sense, and we usually would have that stuff anyway in our inventories. So the typically homebrewed rule of critical success or failures on skill checks has been made official in Baldur's Gate 3. So if you roll a 20 on a skill check, regardless of DC, you succeed. This means that any skill check can be succeeded on eventually if you save scum enough. That's your style of gameplay. Conversely, a natural one will lead to a failure no matter how skilled your super charismatic bard is at persuading folks. There's also a few changes to ranged attacks. Range of spells and ranged weapons have been introduced to about a 60-foot cap, which is still an absurd amount of distance in the Larian Studios game anyway. In addition, ranged attacks are affected by high ground and low ground, so if a creature is 10 feet above an enemy, then they'll get +2 to their attack roll. If they're 10 feet below the enemy, they'll get -2 to their attack roll. Definitely something to keep in mind, as a lot of combat encounters in this game have some verticality to them. Now, we've had several changes to spells. The biggest ones are no more verbal, somatic, or material components. This should remove some of the tediousness and supply gathering that wizards had to deal with before. In addition, prepared spells can now be changed at any point outside of combat compared to just during a long rest, like during the tabletop game. This is huge for prepared casters and should give you access to tons of tools for bypassing non-combat encounters. Or if you see an enemy troop up ahead, you can just prepare the right spells for encountering those enemies. Also, scrolls have been updated and simplified, allowing anyone to use a spell scroll with no check required. So one nice quality of life change we've seen is to be able to freely swap between a melee weapon set and a ranged weapon set. This means that you can easily shoot an enemy with an arrow, and then run up, take out your sword and shield, and whack them. Pretty sweet. So shoving, jumping, and the help action have all been changed a bit. Shoving is now a bonus action that pushes an enemy. You cannot knock them prone unless they fall off a ledge. Jumping is also now a bonus action that consumes 10 feet of movement. You can jump anywhere from 15 feet to 35 feet depending on your strength score. So a character with a strength level of 20 can basically use their bonus action to convert 10 feet of movement to 35 feet of movement. Definitely good to get some extra speed for you. Finally, the help action can bring a downed ally up to 1 hit point. No healing spells required. Pretty nice. Now we also have some key features missing from the tabletop edition, such as readying in action, grappling, and the dodge action. Hopefully at least grappling and the dodge action will be implemented in the future, but we shall see. Now let's talk about potions. Consuming a potion is now a bonus action instead of an action, and you can now throw potions with an action and it will deliver their effect to a small radius. This means that if your crew is hit with a fireball, you can just throw a potion between you all and buff out that damage a bit. Pretty sweet. Now onto equipment. So, big standout change here is that there's now weapon action attacks, depending on the weapon type, usable only once per short rest. Now there's a lot of these weapon actions. but they can do pretty sweet things such as inflict status effects, cleave multiple enemies, or give yourself extra damage on attacks. Another change is that there's no longer a magic attunement system, although the correct armor still requires proficiency, such as magical helms, boots, gloves, shields, etc. Personally, I'd love if we still had a magic attunement system, but it's not that bad of a change. Alright, now on to conditions. So there's been some changes to several conditions as well as some new ones added. The prone condition is now a bit more severe. Your character cannot do anything while prone and you lose your turn if you become prone during it, such as by falling off a ledge. You also now have disadvantage on strength and dexterity saves while prone, and ranged attacks are no longer at disadvantage against prone targets. A new condition that we have is called Wet, which Larian Studios veterans may be familiar with. Wet gives you resistance to fire damage but vulnerability to lightning and cold. So those were some of the biggest changes to the rules themselves. Of course, there's still changes to classes, races, feats, and spells that I did not go over. I recommend checking out the Baldur's Gate 3 wiki if you want to see the full list of changes and read more detail about it. Overall, these changes seem to make the game more streamlined and fun, and I cannot wait to play this game next week on August 3rd. I'm so excited. Thank you all so much for watching, I really appreciate it. Please leave comments about your thoughts, changes that you're excited for that I did not cover. And yeah, that's all I got for you. Have a great day.